Sites, episode 318. A shout out to our viewers to like this program so it can reach its maximum potential. Today is Monday, the 7th of March, and here is what is happening around the world. First, we start with market news. Global oil prices skyrocket as Brent crosses $130 a barrel and crude is at $125. It's had a small pullback since then, and we'll update you that information. 10-year US Treasury bonds sink to 1.69%. Cryptocurrencies crash with an imminent ban on Russian crypto transactions, and markets around the world tank as the fallout continues. Sridharji, welcome to PGurus channel. You're the co-host, sir. What are your thoughts about where the crude oil is going to settle? Now it's been on a tear.
I think the crude oil is going to, in my humble view, with the way the prices are going and with more things to follow, we're easily looking at the 130 to 150 band. I talked about $150 very much imminent. The other thing is that whatever is the price, the sustained high prices is not going to be for short term, is going to be here for a little bit of the time window and flowing into the economy, causing inflationary pressures. Because you can't just shut off supply and turn on supply, in a very rapid manner. So this is going to be here, Sriji.
And in Russia, Ukraine, Europe developments, Putin threatens Europe and nations sending fighters and equipment into Ukraine. It is alleged that Russia is recruiting Syrian fighters for urban warfare. UN is extremely concerned that the nuclear plant is under Russian armed forces control as the Russian forces switch off the networks at the power plant. Sridharji, even a bomb in the vicinity of the nuclear plant is a very dangerous thing, because I've seen some explanations being trotted out that it was not the reactor itself, that it was the administration building. Sridharji, the West has spent close to $2 trillion over a period of time to just put a proper roof on the Chernobyl reactor, sir. $2 trillion.
2 trillion. Sriji, I think what you're witnessing right now is Western versus non-Western narrative. If you try to, put some perspective, then you are either called a Western representative, to put it mildly, or you are called as the other way, which is namely you are pro right, anti-liberal, etc. So you have this type of shaping of the narrative that is going on. But what's happening in the process is we are missing the facts. As you rightly point out, the fire doesn't matter whether it is in a building or a shed within a nuclear complex, means it has a problem. The second problem that we're witnessing in this particular complex is that apparently now the reactors are now under the control of the Russian forces, and they're slowly, these people are very experienced. These forces are not the non-conventional, the guys who fight, but they seem to be very specialist elite forces who know how to monitor and manage these nuclear stations. They have switched off the networks, which effectively means monitoring becomes extremely cumbersome. So this is an ominous sign from the perspective of what IAEA is saying. If you happen to be non-Westerner, their view is this is all a fake narrative that is being thrown up. This is very common now coming out, especially from vast segments of the Indian diaspora.
And one internet backbone has ceased operations in Russia. Netflix, TikTok, all are not operating anymore inside Russia. So the disinformation perhaps will, take a beating now. We have to wait and see how this plays out. I think lies from any direction is wrong. Maybe one reason why you should be watching PGurus. We are completely data driven. Let's move on to the next topic. Belarus Deputy Defense Minister quits over the Russian invasion. Boris Johnson warns sanction will not work until gas and oil is stopped from Russia. The US mulls a deal to get MiG or MiGs from Poland to Ukraine, and US B-52 bombers fly close to Ukraine borderline, and Marco Rubio says if we implement a no-fly zone, that means World War III. Sridharji, what is the Republican stand on this? Should we assume that what Senator Rubio says is the Republican stand, or is he saying it as an individual?
The Republican stand is very simple, namely impose sanctions, do not get into the war, no-fly zone, and by God, stop all the nonsense around this energy policy and allow natural gas drilling to continue, allow the pipelines to be reestablished, pump more from within the American soil, solve the energy problem, and let the pressure of price reduce at the pump stations for the American consumer. This is the position that the present Republican administration or Republican conclave has taken. Believe it or not, surprisingly, or not surprisingly, Democrats are towing the same line, except on the energy policy. I think we covered it a couple of days ago. Manchin is very much for reopening Keystone Pipeline, but also to allow those 12 or 10 or 12 licenses to be accelerated release and approval by DEA.
And Russia has been suspended from the WTO coordinating group. Ukraine foreign minister says China has the necessary tools to stop Russia. Ukraine and Russia to face world court over genocide. Sridharji, this genocide charge, I think there are a couple of instances. I think it's also come on mainstream media as well as social media, where the Russian bombs have targeted civilian areas. We are even showing some very grotesque scenes, Sridharji. So I think there is it has some substance, this lawsuit.
It does. Just before we transition to this segment, one important point: the Ukraine pilots are not trained. They are all used to flying the Russian planes. Hence, I think there is an attempted move to move the MiGs from Poland. Yeah, the MiGs from Poland, and then replace the MiGs in Poland with F-16s, or I don't think they'll give them F-35s, F-16s. So I think this is a very interesting move that the Biden administration is contemplating. Now, to get back to your point, there clearly is messages coming from the Ukrainians that hospitals and civil infrastructure, including neighborhoods, have been targeted, and which is what they have documented in a systematic manner. Now, the Russian view is that, as is often the case, that the Ukrainians have used, people as what you call as human shields, which resulted in casualties, especially these handheld, what they call javelin missiles in domestic locations. This is Russia's stand. It's going to be interesting to see as the evidence is presented how this is going to play out. If you all remember the famous Ukrainian plane that was shot down,
you mean the Malaysian plane, sir?
Which one?
Malaysian plane.
There's Malaysian. There's also one other plane. I think either the defense or the I think it's an army plane. It was shot down, and that probably was not that much mainstream as it relates to the commercial plane that you are alluding to.
Right.
And it has never seen the end of the day in terms of the conclusion of the course of the case.
Yeah. In fact, one of the stories that is trotted out is that MH17, around the same time, Prime Minister Modi was on the same area of skies, traveling back to India, and somebody was putting out a theory that was intended for Mr. Modi, and somehow the thing went and hit poor Malaysian Airlines flight. Very, very sad, sir. MH17, I believe. Residents in Mariupol are trapped as fighting is intensifying. Is Odessa next? Wants French President Macron. The Russian convoy stalls and Putin calls to Ukraine to surrender. A little bit about the item, sir. Odessa is a very key port, because if the Russians capture Odessa, then essentially they can cut off Ukraine from any sea access.
Yeah, CFSO is what they will control on either side, Mariupol and Odessa, and they already have Crimea. So, I think that that is what they're attempting to do. And Macron is clearly stating that that is a non-starter. But is Europe going to intervene? The answer is no. So Europe will not intervene. United States will not intervene, contrary to all the rhetoric that is being thrown out. But they will intervene and they will take action if any NATO territory is attacked. I think that's why Vladimir is playing very, very cautious until whatever the outcome that eventually turns out in Ukraine. Then it becomes very interesting. Where is he going next? And there is theories going around. It looks like Moldova, Georgia, and Kazakhs are very much in the radar as to re-establishing. We again covered this some time ago, that he is holding the old Soviet Union map. That seems to be his agenda in the absence of global leadership and vacuum in global leadership.
An Israeli prime minister will try to mediate even if the prospects are poor. We had reported, in fact, I had a separate monologue on this over the weekend about Naftali Bennett taking a short flight across to Russia, talking with Putin, and then from there on going to Western Europe. Sridharji, your prognosis on Israel's efforts, because Israel has been sort of keeping a low profile through all this stuff, except Israel has a lot of key interests in both Russia as well as in Ukraine, isn't it?
It does. It does have strategic interests both in Russia, and I think we have covered again here that there is some kind of an implicit cooperation between Israel and Russia, especially in Syria, as it relates to Syria and Lebanon, as it relates to some of the vulnerable jihadi spots. The second, which is even more important, is there's considerable segment of Jews still from the remnants of the old World War II, both in Ukraine and Russia, and they're trying their best to offer them refuge and bring them across. And I think that's the purpose of his mission.
And Erdogan appeals to Russia to end war, declare ceasefire, and make peace. It remains to be seen. Turkey itself was thought to be very aggressive. They just went and annexed more land, Sridharji. Everybody starts quoting from the scriptures once their mission is accomplished.
Well, I think that it's very, very interesting that Turkey has taken suddenly a different stance. They are also implementing. Implementing the Black Sea port monitoring and restrictions, much to the anguish of the Russians. So it's fairly interesting within that context, the position that Turkey has taken in this conflict.
And in US news, the United States says 1.5 million people have thus far fled Ukraine as fighting intensifies. Blinken says the US is in talks with allies to ban Russian oil imports. Nancy Pelosi pushes a bill to ban trade with Russia and Belarus. Sridharji, the most important thing is to ban oil imports. What will the Western Europe do if they stop getting oil and natural gas from Russia? The slack has to be picked up instantly, Sridharji. Your thoughts on how logistics are going to work?
Well, first and foremost, on the energy side, I think unless strategic reserves are released for a period of not one day, but for 60 days, you do 60,000, 70,000 barrels, it just doesn't add up. You've got to be able to release, 30 to 60 days reserves. Once if you choose to do that, then it's a different story altogether. There are ships that can ferry the as far as the oil is concerned. The gas is concerned, they're trying to take it from the Gulf. When I say Gulf, I'm not talking about our New Orleans area. They're trying to ship it from that side of the coast because Qatar has emphatically stated that it has no capacity to supply; it's fully booked out. Now, those are the only scenarios that is open, but Europeans are used to pain and hurt, through two world wars. So it's not going to be a seamless transition and cut over. So there's going to be some pain. Now, what's the cause? What's the alternative that they have? The alternative that they have is to accede to Vladimir's request. So will the European leadership accede to Vladimir's request, which is namely to say, vacate this area, vacate this area, vacate that area, take out the NATO missile shields from here, take out all these observations. Will Europe accede to that request? This is the other side of the coin. People think that Russia has been, unfairly dealt with. The Western media has unfairly categorized and castigated Russia in a very poor light. And this is all, Western coup in terms of making sure that the Russian economy and Russia is marginalized and Ukraine is just a pawn in the game. So this is the other side of the view. Now, the facts are that, if you talk to the NATO people, the NATO say that, look, we are reasonable and we have not conceded membership to Ukraine. We are not threatening Russia. This is NATO's view. But this is the demand. We have a letter from Vladimir asking us to accede to certain demands, which we're not going to. So how this is going to, what is the end state game plan of Vladimir? We don't know unless that there is some major hiccups. Otherwise, this thing is going to continue for some time.
And Americans must exit Russia immediately, wants the State Department. So this is an indication that things are going to intensify. Sridharji, you are spot on, sir.
It is. I think that this is basically going to get worse. It is going to get into a civil war. It is going to become an urban warfare. There's lots of things that have been floated, from foreign guerrillas on either side, ready and prepared to fight. There's also been, Chechnyan special forces which came in, and there have been 3 attempts on the Ukrainian Prime Minister Zelensky, and all the 3 attempts have been thwarted. The Russia also started to spread a campaign that Zelensky has escaped and flown to Poland. He is hiding in U.S. embassy. All these kinds of things that are going on. And this misinformation campaign, and then Russia has also had its own challenges in terms of the dissent within Russia, which has been put down, media bans, etc. So what we're going to see is that this has now moved into, especially with the stalling of that big convoy for various reasons, this is now going to get into urban guerrilla kind of warfare, and how long this is going to do, what the targets are, remains a very interesting proposition. That means more chaos.
So there are lots of stories also coming from the Ukraine side, and we have to take those also with a pinch of salt. One of the things that's being trotted out is that the troops caught in that convoy have not had proper salaries paid, and then they are being given local cell phones to call up their mom and pop to say that we are doing okay. I mean, we don't know if it is true or not. So both sides are indulging in these kinds of exaggerations or narratives that cannot be verified. So we have to wait and see why that thing stalled. It is 40 miles or 64 kilometers long. It's a fairly big convoy, and it is just outside of Kiev. But I think there is some progress. Russia is still crawling and capturing one street at a time. Maybe we have to wait and see how that plays out. Now, Biden's budget reduction package undercut by push for trillions in social welfare spending. U.S. energy problems is not just restricted to the cutting of Keystone Pipe or other projects, but in the foundational myths around the utility of alternate energy sources, net zero greenhouse gas emissions, and inevitable transition to an alternate form of energy. Sridharji, for all the goodness of electric powered vehicles, see, we still don't answer the other side. How is the electricity, the extra electricity being generated? Now, if you're using coal-fired plants to do that, then you're basically, just distributing the noise somewhere else, the pollution somewhere else.
Yeah. All you need to do is Look at the top 4 polluters in the world. Okay,
China?
United States, China, Russia, India. Okay, and China and India are still reliant on coal. So, going and telling the world, okay, stop coal and move to wind energy, move to solar energy, and we'll give you lots of incentives, etc., and move to electric vehicles, and there has to be a transition plan, but you're putting billions and billions of dollars without an augmented effort in terms of the alternate. What the Chinese and the Indians will say is, you Western nations have puffed and puffed and puffed enough smoke into the air. You've gone past the Industrial Revolution, and now you are a very powerhouses in the economic arena. Well, we are still a developing economies, and therefore we need to make our way. We're not going to be able to put this additional capital and wait forever for the energy needs of our nations to be met. So this is the counter, and this is the reason why you can do all types of models in your books. All you need to do is go back and look at what happened to Britain, especially in the last 2 winters, when they were reliant on wind energy to be augmentative or substitutional to their energy needs, and when that didn't turn up, and they suffered. So I think this is the reason why that this alternate energy situation has to be very carefully managed, and the capital needs to be deployed very prudently. We are seeing what we are seeing right now. This war is going to eat into people's budgets in different ways apart from inflation.
Sridharji, just to add to your point, in the recent briefing by the Assistant Secretary of State, Donald Lu, to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, he had said that India is much ahead of its goals to net zero emissions. And that was one of the bright spots in that talk that he gave, where he was giving an update of South Asia and Central Asia. And just wanted to tell our viewers that India is actually making a lot of progress in trying to combat some of these challenges. Let's take a look at Asian news. Beijing describes Ukraine as a prodigal son in state propaganda. China launches the media blitz as it tries to distance itself from the Russian invasion. Many Chinese groups around the world activated to get back into the mainstream, with the West distracted by Ukraine. I'm not sure we are distracted. We are saying everything. We are seeing the whole 360-degree view, which is why we have 3 days a week now.
Well, indeed, I think just before we might transition, India is doing it in a manner whereby it is all the new capacity is coming from the alternate sources rather than a substitution occurring, because India's starting point is different. And India strategically pursued this solar. And I think that is the reason why the probability of India meeting and achieving its target is much higher relative to United States or China is concerned. Now, getting to back into the Asian scheme of things, it's fairly clear that there is a shift taking place, and Asia is watching with a lot of concern. One of the nations which is stepping up to the game is Japan. Japan is clearly stepping up to the game. ASEAN is extremely worried that, distracted by the situation, that their security is under threat. Notably 3 countries: Indonesia, Brunei, Singapore, and also Philippines to a greater extent. Now, to make things fairly clear, it's not Taiwan. There is currently, as we speak, exercises are going on by the Chinese Navy in the Scarborough Shoals, as well as in the Spratly Islands. That area has been one of contentions. As you all know, there's an old ship that is docked. That area is being contested. China has a new legislation or a new rule whereby it can convert petrol boats into naval, so they are allowed to fire. And they're conducting exercises. Don't forget that around the 2008-2012 period, when the world went to sleep, is the time that the Spratly Islands became epitome of China Sea policy, and a temporary artificial island came up, and from then all we have seen is trouble.
And Japan Incorporated steps up offer to fast track Ukraine refugees. Japan has been historically not been, doing something like this, giving refuge to the. This is a welcome, fresh approach.
It is. I think Japan is showing leadership. Japan is waking up. Sometimes necessity is the mother of invention. Japan needs people. Japan has got a demographic problem. Japan has also got a security problem because Russia's next agenda is, Kuril Islands on the upper North Shore. So, I think that what they're saying is, we welcome refugees, we support, we will look after them, and we need to respond and rise to the occasion. Why? There's no leadership again in Asia Pacific. There is no leadership. It has to come. It has to come from Japan, sir.
People keep talking about a two-pronged war for India. Now, people will start thinking about a two-pronged war for US also. If Russia were to take on the Kuril Islands and Japan and China were to take on Taiwan, that is a multi-pronged war for US. I'm not sure US can handle both. They may be in the similar or same geographical region, but the focus, that's where things are going to get interesting. So stay tuned. Singapore sanctions 4 Russian banks and blocks crypto loophole. So a little bit about the crypto loophole, Sridharji.
Crypto loophole is as follows. You have wallets and exchanges located in multiple locations with different jurisdictional requirements. And it is not a very simple and trivial exercise for monitoring and restricting financial transactions that occurs. A wallet registered in Russia doing a transaction in some way in Cayman Islands or doing a transaction in Korea. So this is very much reliant on not only exchanges, but specific regulations that must come in from an enforcement point of view. So Singapore is probably one of the more advanced in terms of monitoring and regulating these transactions. So Singapore is saying that, whatever the crypto transactions are, we're going to not only restrict the categories of transactions, the exchanges in which these transactions, these wallets can transact, and much stringent KYC in terms of who the holder of the wallet is.
And Sridharji, I urge you to consider making a 5 to 10 minute monologue about the new world order as far as, moving money around countries is involved. It's become a lot more procedural, lot more difficult now, and all the Indian bandicoot politicians, babus and businessmen who have salted money in tax havens, they may be able to see their money, but they may not be able to take it out. That's what the new order seems to be. We'll keep you posted on this, viewers. There is a lot of interesting stuff going on there also. And in Indian news, Ukraine war exposes the limit of India's strategic independence, writes Nikkei Asia, and India pitches with France to become a Rafale maintenance hub. So these are the last 2 items for today. So your thoughts, and then we can call it a wrap.
Well, I think, first is Nikkei Asia. The reason I point out is that I urge all the people to read. You can search and read the article. I take it with a pinch of salt. The reason I take it with a pinch of salt is when you read that article, it almost says somehow China has made a strategic choice and keep retaining strategic flexibility, and almost to pretend all this intelligence, all the stuff was shared with Russia or with China, but somehow China is regretting or miscalculated the level of cavalry that Vladimir Putin is demonstrating. So they probably did not sign off, is what this article alludes to, but that is exactly contrary to the truth. Whereas in the case of India, they point out India has been given an opportunity to rise to be, a global player in number of theaters. All the different trilateral agreements, quadrilateral, Munich Security Conference, 2+2 dialogues, Indo-Pacific forums, etc. And suddenly, lo and behold, India is going back to the coattails of Russia. This is what the article says. Now, I have only one significant observation. Has Modi lost the trust in the process of some of the world leaders? Because we covered this, Morrison, Kishida, Biden, Boris did not call, but certainly Macron called. The German leader did not call. Has Modi miscalculated? I don't know. But India seems to think that they have made a right strategic decision. Now, on one side, they're saying that Europe is in trouble. On the next side, you're going and saying, oh, France, you come here and you manage the hub. But guess what? Russia is my strategic kind of a player, and he's the one with whom I'll work with and do a deal. This is notwithstanding the fact that I have done a Rafael deal. How Modi is going to balance this remains an interesting question from a trust factor point of view. I think Israel would be fine. The India-Israel relationship would be fine. I think that because they suffer from similar kinds of issues. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens to the specific hub that he's aspiring. But I personally feel that, Modi should have taken a much more stronger stand with regard to as far as Russia is concerned, notwithstanding all the deals, because Russia has not reciprocated. Maybe 50 years ago they did, maybe 40 years ago they did, maybe 20 years ago they did. But in the last 10 years, Russia has been a beneficiary, but not a reciprocal kind of a deterrence as far as India is concerned. This is my view.
Thank you very much, 𝙤𝙧𝙤𝙪. And that brings us to a close on today's program. Please do like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to click on the join or bell button for getting notifications. Thank you very much, 𝙤𝙧𝙤𝙪. See you all Wednesday. Namaskar.
Namaskar. Have a good day, have a good evening, and good night.